Inside's mansion, watched his crew moving fast, making sure they gathered up every bit of cash. He kept a close eye on everyone, not wanting anyone to pocket anything on the side. The guys in the room started murmuring as they realized all the stuff around them. These were the supplies being handed over. Took charge, telling everyone to shift the military gear to where was waiting. The whole place felt tense and busy, with people rushing to get things sorted and no one wanting to mess up. Jane let know he was heading home. She responded, giving him an answer. He wasn't caught off guard when she asked. He had a lot left on his plate and didn't even hesitate to say so. He brought up what they talked about before, reminding her she'd be handling Deneb and the capital from now on. That meant it was her turn to keep the deal, and he needed the 300,000 gold she promised. Frowned, clearly annoyed. She looked like she was tired of hearing about the same thing over and over, especially when it came to money. He just shrugged, acting like it was no big deal. To him, supporting someone meant sticking around, no questions asked. She tells him he comes off as cold and distant. As his patron, she wants to understand what makes him tick. She brings up Baron as an example and asks what goal pushes him to throw himself into work all the time. Takes a good look at her, thinking things through before saying what's on her mind. He didn't have any crazy dreams or big plans. All he really wanted was to live an easy life and never have to worry about going hungry. She didn't buy what he was saying. If that was really what he wanted, he would teamed up with Delphine's crew, just like Viscount Joseph suggested, instead of joining their royalist side. Honestly, had always been a solid leader. Lane answers, making it clear that, as the guy who's supposed to take over for and lead, he's got a special responsibility. He had a goal and he knew he couldn't reach it alone. He needed her help, but he wasn't about to let her carry any of the weight. This was something he planned to handle himself, no matter what. She tenses up, wondering why people always say burdens are meant to be shared. Before she can get her thoughts out, though, something interrupts her. He reaches out and grabs her hand. She loses her grip on her fan, and it slips right out of her hand. He kisses it. She turns red, trying to hide how embarrassed she feels. He just wanted her to be happy. That was all that mattered to him. Ben just turns and heads off, not saying a word. She stays quiet, watching him leave. He just stands there, watching as the other guy walks away. As he heads out, figures the banquet wraps up pretty well. By turning down offer, he keeps things on his own terms and feels a little more in control of what happens next. He steps in just in time to help out Marquise Branford, making sure nothing happens to his face. All the stuff that was supposed to help out was getting shipped off to, and instead. With the Branford name backing him, he gets a lot of perks, stuff like tax breaks and getting treated better than most people. He managed to get 50,000 people from the royal city to move over to his land. The workers, who were super valuable for building and crafting, got sent off too. Now, their territory wasn't just some poor, tiny place anymore. Nobody could treat it like it didn't matter. He figured there had to be another reason for them showing up face-to-face like this. Deep down, he started to wonder if his life might be in real danger. He knew that if he hesitated for even a second in this house, he'd be done for. Glared at Delphine, her anger burning so bright you could almost feel it in the air. She locked eyes with him, every muscle tense, as if she was daring him to make a move. Could tell she wasn't messing around. Her whole vibe said she wanted him gone, like she wouldn't rest until he was out of the picture for good. Even the people nearby could sense something was about to go down. Every mark he ever made in this world. As you head out too, the fields are packed with tall, golden grain, swaying in the breeze. Dwight moves through all of it, taking it in, surrounded by the signs of a good harvest. The dwarves shuffle along, chains clinking around their wrists and ankles. One of the dwarves looked over at, who seemed to be in charge, and nodded toward the entrance. He noticed the Lord had just shown up. Rode into town and everyone started cheering. It was clear everyone was hyped to see their lord come back. Even the horse looked proud, like it knew it was part of something important. People around couldn't help but react, surprised and excited to see return. Everyone was outside waiting to meet them. Honestly, it was expected. Claude and Karen stood there, all smiling as they joined the group. Even the dwarves looked caught off guard. They glance at each other and start whispering, clearly not expecting whatever just happened. Everyone looked pumped. This place was totally new to him, nothing like anywhere he'd been before. Word was, the Lord here was the kind who actually took care of his people, making sure no one went hungry. You could tell the folks around really respected their Lord. Looked over at and Spitz, watching them closely. He wondered if they'd finally figured things out after everything that happened. No matter what, nobles always act the same. They only care about themselves, looking down on everyone else. He figured this guy was probably just like the rest. The dwarves stared at, waiting to see what he'd do next. They clearly weren't sure if he was serious about going through with his plan, and everyone was tense, just watching for his reaction. He lets everyone know they're sticking to the plan. Glanced over at the dwarves, noticing the heavy chains holding them down. She didn't say anything, just kept her thoughts to herself as she took in the scene. Shot him a look, making it pretty clear she wanted him to at least wave. He let out a small sigh and lifted his hand, giving a quick wave like he was just getting it over with. Claude let out a deep breath, finally home and clearly enjoying it. He seemed pretty happy about being back, especially now that money wasn't a problem. For once, he could actually kick back and take it easy. Lunt tells Claude to gather up all the research materials he'd asked Lowell to find and bring them over to her office. Right away, Claude's mood drops. He had just gotten back, barely even caught his breath when cut him off straight away. She wasn't having any of it. To her, breaks weren't for people like him. If he thought his trip to the capital counted as work, she made it clear that was more like a break than anything else. Everyone's already in the meeting room. Looked at Lowell, trying to figure out if something had gone down with Director General. Lowell just shook his head, letting her know nothing happened. Let Lowell know he'd be stopping by soon and wanted an update on everything that went down while he was gone. Lowell told him the territory was running just like had planned before heading off to the capital. Nothing important had changed, and everyone was following the rules he'd set up. Couldn't help but bring up the construction work on the main buildings. On his way over, he'd checked things out and saw that the crews had already wrapped up all the road and waterway repairs, even though he and Vanessa hadn't been around. Vanessa wasn't too happy with his attitude, so she gave him a light tap with her staff to remind him to show some respect. Lowell nodded, pretty satisfied with how things were going. Most of the workshops and the big grain storage were close to done now. With the slaves from the capital working, it wouldn't take long to finish up. The fields had been crazy productive too, so much that buying grain from the merchant guilds might not be needed anymore. Want to know how good the crop is this time? Claude's answer is loud, almost as loud as. The amount they produce on each bit of land is actually the best in the whole kingdom. Wendy remembers when Claude Lane said that farming in this place would never work. Looked pretty happy, thinking that if things kept going like this, he could end up as a big shot, especially now with the royalists backing him up. Could see that's plan for bringing the territory back was finally starting to work. Himself felt they'd managed to get things looking right so far, but deep down, he knew it wasn't time to relax yet. There was still a lot more to do. He tells Claude to keep buying food nonstop and to grab more land early for new homes. Claude doesn't really get it and looks confused, then speaks up, her voice low but strong. She says it's time to get ready for war. The whole room goes quiet. Claude looked around, wondering who'd even try to mess with them now that they were part of the royalists. Tossed out the names, and as possible troublemakers, then pointed out a report that needed checking. Lowell stepped in and handed over the report without a word. He goes through the news and finds out that in territory, there's a huge conscription going on. Tons of people are being called up for training, and they're even recruiting free knights. On top of that, the records show that someone's been buying up loads of weapons and iron ore lately. He explains that this is the info he asked Lowell to get about what Count S been up to before heading to the capital. The biggest thing that stands out is how Count has been grabbing a lot of top-grade iron ore from County. Arya thinks about what it really takes to go to war. Stuff like food, people to fight, and weapons. Iron ore stands out since it's what you need to make and fix weapons. But looking at how much iron ore this guy is buying, Arya can tell it's way more than what anyone would need when things are calm. Care had a serious look on his face, and when he spoke, everyone could tell he wasn't messing around. The way he talked about it, a war actually seemed possible. It wasn't just some wild rumor. This time it felt real. Grumbles under his breath, thinking they're probably about to get into trouble again. Odd points out that if keeps grabbing all the resources for himself, things are going to get messy. They really need iron ore to level up their territory, but Count isn't willing to make any deals. Agrees and says it's pretty clear now that Count is siding with Delphine. That makes things even trickier, especially since their enemies might have already finished getting ready to attack while they were busy trying to secure their own iron ore. The atmosphere gets tense. Notes that it's hard to ignore just how uncomfortable things have got. From here on out, he was ready to lay out what needed to be done. Everyone leans forward, their eyes locked on what's about to happen. He didn't hesitate at all. He made it clear they'd go after County first. His place was castle. A hand drops a blueberry into his mouth. He spits the seed right at Harold and just loses it. Everyone knew about the strongest sword in the North, Count. Harold was his name, and just hearing it made people pay attention. Word came from the Duke's house about territory. The Lord there is. Everyone says to stay sharp around him like you're up against the best fighter in the North. No one ever knows what he'll do next. The advisor warned Count to get ready for a fight, but just rolled his eyes. He didn't take it seriously at all, acting like this kind of warning was just a waste of his time. Harold realized that he was the one who had to step up and head into the fight. Harold tells everyone that the order came straight from the Duke's house. As soon as Count hears this, he suddenly loses it. It's like his whole tough guy act just falls apart right there. The group burst out laughing and started teasing him, their voices echoing through the room. After that defeat, it was like all the fight had drained out of everyone. Nobody even thought about starting another war on their home turf. The castle stood strong with its double walls, way tougher than any normal fortress. A deep moat circled around it, making it even harder to get in. The defenders relied on siege engines crafted by the best smiths from the north, built to handle anything thrown at them. After checking out the citadel that had been around for generations, he realized he had to step up his game. He felt a bit sorry, but deep down, he was confident. His own castle had always stood strong and never been broken into. Didn't even try, not once. But before anyone could start stressing about him, it looked like he should probably focus on his own problems. He just lost the one thing he was counting on, his secret weapon. Hearing that, Harold got tense, clearly not happy with the comment. The atmosphere in the room instantly changed. Now it moves over to territory, and are there welcoming as he shows up. He walks in, face all serious. He stands in front of the mercenaries, and just like that, they drop. He stood there, not saying a word. Everyone else just stayed quiet, watching him and waiting to see what he'd do next. He thought it was a solid move to set money stuff aside for once. Trusting someone and going along with what they say isn't something most guys do without thinking. But somehow, these 200 guys decided to stick with him up to this point, choosing to believe in him even when it wasn't easy. He looked at the group and made it clear he was going to turn them into knights. Pushed his sword into the ground, steady and confident. Around him, the soldiers watched, waiting for something big. When he announced the start of the Knight's Order, the guys instantly threw their hands up and started cheering. You could tell they were actually pumped, not just pretending. Their voices echoed all around, and even the old flag caught the wind, fluttering behind them. From a distance, someone kept an eye on what was going on. The whole thing was wild, and he couldn't really wrap his head around it, no matter how much he tried. He glanced over at Wendy, hoping for some kind of reaction, but she stayed quiet. Earlier, dropped the news that they'd be going after County first. When she said that, the whole group just stopped in their tracks. Claude wanted to know how things ended up like this. Told him that Count and were acting like they weren't picking sides, but in reality they were backing the ducal house from behind the scenes. Basically, they were doing the ducal house's dirty work without anyone noticing. Wasn't just helping the enemy, they were a problem for Claude's side too. But if Claude's side could pull off a win in this war, they'd get control over Iron Ore. That meant a huge boost for their own power and a way to slow down the other side from getting stronger. This was the kind of chance that could change everything. God looked over at them, waiting to see what their plan would be. Pointed out that soldiers had some of the best gear around, especially compared to other places up north. Listened, thinking about what that meant for their own army. He realized they weren't just outnumbered, they didn't have gear that could match up either. It was clear their side was falling behind, both in how many people they had and how good their equipment was. Told the group that she would train all 200 of their mercenaries to fight with just one sword, like real knights. She explained that a properly trained knight was way stronger than just a regular fighter, and her plan was to get everyone up to that level. The guys listened, taking in how much work it would take, but also realizing how much stronger their team could become if they pulled it off. If they put together a squad of 200 knights, it would be like having 20,000 regular soldiers on their side. Couldn't help but wonder how any of this could work. From what she knew, getting good at using mana usually took years. The whole thing just didn't add up in her head. Signaled to Vanessa, asking her to bring something over. Vanessa nodded and got moving right away. He hauls in 3 barrels packed with sigils. Claude wanted to know if all that had been used up just to make these. Hands over a guide, explaining that it'll help anyone get the hang of using mana, even if it's not exactly the usual way. She's tweaked the family's original training method, making it simpler and more straightforward. With this new version, picking up the basics shouldn't take more than a month. Looked at him, clearly not happy. She brought up how he changed the family's cultivation technique without telling anyone, and everyone knew the Lord would lose it if he found out. He just shrugged, acting like it was no big deal. To him, tweaking the technique was better than sitting around and risking his life because he never learned anything new. He figured it was worth it, even if it meant getting in trouble later. Tells the group that just training their soldiers isn't going to cut it if they want to take down Castle. Back when he worked as a mercenary, he still remembered the time he first stepped into Count's castle. The place was a fortress, with thick double walls and a deep moat wrapped around it. Defensive gear was set up perfectly everywhere you looked. With a setup like that, nobody had ever managed to take the castle, not once in the family's history. If the defenders decided to dig in for a siege, trying to use normal mercenary tricks would be almost impossible. After hearing all this, Claude made it clear that going for a surprise attack wasn't going to work. He figured it was smarter to forget about the first strike and just focus on cutting off instead. Getting iron ore from somewhere else might be. Gave him a look that said she had everything under control. She was confident, like she'd already figured things out before anyone else even started thinking about them. It was clear she wasn't stressed about what was coming next. She always seemed to have some backup plan ready, no matter what. Right now, one of the mercenaries steps forward. He wondered how anyone could even become a knight if they needed to use mana. From what he'd heard, learning that kind of thing was supposed to take years, even if you were quick. It just didn't make sense to him how someone was supposed to figure out how to use mana at all. Explained that learning how to control mana usually takes years, but she was confident she could help him figure it out in just a month. The mercenary couldn't believe what he was hearing. A month sounded almost impossible. Stood there, totally sure of herself. She gave a look that said she had this under control and didn't seem worried at all. She was ready to break things down in a way that actually made sense, so nobody would get lost or confused. The scene moves to the training hall, where mercenaries are sprawled out, looking totally wiped. Stands in the middle, focused, channeling mana into one of the men on the ground. The guy looks like he's struggling, but he's pushing through. Trying to cram years of hard work into just a single month is really taking a toll on everyone. Sigils started to work, and for a moment he could sense mana in the air around him. He focused, trying to pull those tiny particles together right under his like he was winding up a ball of thread. It took a lot out of him, but he managed to pull it off, forming a mana core for the first time. Outside the castle, noticed how hard he'd been working and let him know she saw his effort. Appreciated it and nodded back, grateful for a bit of recognition. He asked someone to take the group back to their rooms and keep an eye on them for a bit. Then, he mentioned that Lowell was going to start making the armor for their order. He wanted to know how the workers were holding up. The elves still hadn't shown up, but the dwarves were already hanging out in the lodgings on their land. Was there too, keeping an eye on things. He glances up at the sky, his thoughts racing. There wouldn't be a moon in the sky tonight. Just outside the edge of territory, a hand reached out from behind a bush. The thing suddenly bursts up from the ground, sending dirt flying everywhere. Gathered everyone together, getting their attention. One of the dwarves looked at him, unsure about what would happen next. He wondered if escaping the kingdom would really set them free. The uncertainty hung in the air, and everyone waited for his answer, hoping he knew what he was doing. Explained that there's a hidden area in another kingdom where slaves from different backgrounds all live together. People talk about it like it's real, so he figured it had to exist. With that in mind, he pressed forward, pointing out that the border was just up ahead. Out of nowhere, the dwarves start shaking, catching off guard. He looks at them, confused, not sure why they're all pausing like this. He pushes them to keep moving, trying to figure out what's making everyone freeze up. They started moving, not looking back. The choice was clear now, either keep pushing forward or stick to the old life, making toys for people who'd never even noticed them. There was no room for doubt anymore. If anyone was still scared, they could always turn around and go back to what they knew, but for the ones who kept going, it was time to face whatever came next. They start to tear up, calling out from behind, trying to get his attention. He turns around and spots standing there. For a second, neither of them moves. There was news. Lets him know that trying to get away isn't going to do any good. Froze for a second, stumbling over his words. He couldn't hide how surprised he was that someone had already caught on to the escape plan. It was clear he hadn't expected anyone to figure things out so quickly. Paused, his words catching for a second. He looked around, trying to figure out if anyone else was with them, his mind racing as he wondered if the other guy had shown up solo. He admits it without trying to dodge the question, just nodding and owning up to what he did. The dwarves bunched together, glancing at each other. Out of nowhere, he spun around, wild and intense, almost like a cornered animal. With you gone, his son would finally be free. Didn't hesitate. She just nodded, showing she was ready to give it a shot if she could. Stands tall while the dwarves are all out cold on the ground. The only one left awake is their leader. He shakes as he tries to push himself up, his arms barely steady enough to hold his weight. Stands tall in front of him, pointing out how tough dwarves can be. He also warns that if people find out he ran away, things could get messy for him. The other slave traders out there never let up. They always chase after runaways, no matter what. Sticking around here seemed like the only safe option. Scoffed at the idea, looking like he'd never back down. He'd rather risk everything for his own freedom than waste his days making boring things for rich people. There was no way he'd just go along with what they wanted. He wasn't about to give up without a fight. Lane watches him closely, a small smile on his face. He kept glancing over, probably wondering if everyone thought he liked the guy, who everyone would one day know as the legendary blacksmith, slipped right into a fighting stance like it was second nature. Slane put an offer on the table, work with him for the next 10 years, no holding back. If the deal goes through, he promises to set up a special place just for dwarves where they can actually run things themselves. On top of that, he guarantees freedom from slavery. The offer is clear, help out for a decade, and a new life waits at the end. The dwarves couldn't believe what they just heard. Their eyes went wide, and some of them teared up, barely able to process the idea that they might actually be set free. Just laughed it off, but the truth was hard to ignore. In the kingdom, people like them were officially called slaves. Deep down, nobody really believed that some small-town lord could just change that with a snap of his fingers. Things were never that simple. Slane knew that laws weren't set in stone. People made them, and if things ever got bad enough, those rules could always change. The dwarf looked over at. He remembered hearing that had the royalist faction on his side. That made him think that maybe, just maybe, could actually pull this off. He stays silent, his eyes fixed on something in the distance. His hand tightens into a fist, and his whole body shakes a little. Watched him for a moment, not even glancing at the stuff he was holding. Trinkets and little gifts never really got her attention. She didn't care about those things, and it was pretty clear from the way she looked away, not even bothering to pretend. Fancy stuff. He wanted to make something way cooler than that. Just stood there, caught off guard, not really sure what to say. He tried to play it cool and asked if there was anything else fun they could do. Lane glances up at the sky, his eyes searching the clouds. He seems like he's about to say something important, almost like he's trying to hype himself up for whatever comes next. He looked up at the clouds, thinking about how cool it would be to soar through the air, way above everything else. The idea of flying just seemed awesome, like nothing could hold him back. A month later, over at Castle, the place was buzzing with quiet activity. People were going about their day, but there was a sense that something important was about to happen. Upstairs, the halls felt colder than usual, with sunlight spilling through the windows and landing in sharp shapes on the floor. Even though it looked calm, everyone seemed a little more alert than normal, waiting to see what would unfold next. The letter was pretty blunt. It called out Count, saying he was messing up the whole northern iron market by favoring just one house. If he didn't let the nearby territories in on the action, things wouldn't go well for him. It was signed by Baron. The Count stared at what was in front of him, not really sure what he was looking at. He leaned in, his eyes narrowing, trying to figure it out. It was clear he didn't get it, and for a second he just stood there waiting for someone to explain. The room felt a bit tense as he waited, everyone curious about what he'd do next. His advisors told him the letter was from Baron. They all thought the guy was being rude and acting like a total brat, almost like he'd lost it. Count read the letter and couldn't help but think about how bold it was. In his mind, only someone with real power would try something like this. He wondered what was going on with the group to send out letters this gutsy. One of the advisors mentioned that lately, the territory had been spending a lot of money to buy grain from other places, even paying more than usual just to make sure they had enough. Someone else pointed out that after taking in a bunch of new people sent over by the Royalists, they probably didn't have enough food for everyone. One of the advisors watched the group and didn't get why they kept making choices that seemed to only hurt them in the long run. With harvest season right around the corner and prices about to fall, their decisions just didn't make sense. Someone else just shrugged, thinking that acting without much thought was pretty common for young people anyway. Count turned the letter over in his hand, quietly naming a place under his breath. He'd always been pretty weak, but things started changing fast. Pushing himself to get stronger overnight just made things messier. Deep down, he kind of wished he could seize defeat for himself, but he knew he'd miss it. At the Marquis Branford's mansion, the Marquis walked into his office and threw on his robe. He gets up and notices something unexpected. He spots a letter sitting on his desk, and right away, he sees that the office window's wide open. He grabs the letter and tears it open. He picks up the letter and starts reading through it. He noticed the message was from, and his heart skipped a beat. He freezes when he reads it, eyes wide and heart racing. The Marquis listened as someone warned the Royalist nobles to start saving up enough food to last 10 years. There was talk that a huge famine was about to hit the kingdom, something that could mess up everything for a long time. The Marquis just stood there, totally stunned, not knowing what to say or do. Moonlight started to fade out of his office. The next morning, sunlight crept in through the window, filling the room with a soft, warm glow. Walked in and looked at her dad. She'd heard he hadn't come back the night before, and it was all over her face that she was concerned. At first, he just stands there quiet. After a moment, he turns around. He turns to her and calls her. He sent out word to all the vassals and nobles loyal to the crown, letting them know he wanted everyone to gather for a meeting right away. He sent the letter off to Marquis Branford. Not too long after that, something happened that nobody saw coming. A huge famine swept through the kingdom. The weather turned crazy dry, rivers shrank down until you could see the rocks at the bottom, and all the crops just withered away. People started showing up everywhere, desperate for something to eat. Things got out of control fast as everyone scrambled for food. It was like the whole place had been hit by a disaster. That moment became something everyone would remember. Sat alone in his office, lost in thought. The moment everyone had been waiting for finally arrived. Count showed up again, looking stressed as he talked about these things called hunger stones showing up all over the place. Everyone knew what that meant. There was definitely a drought. Food was getting crazy expensive and couldn't figure out how the weather turned so weird all of a sudden. The nobles who supported the king had already stocked up on food, so they were doing okay. People were also talking about how the territory actually managed to get a good harvest. Count was getting a lot of respect for that. Pounds his fist on the table, making everything rattle. Hesitation just made everyone angry. He should already taken control of, locked down their supplies, and made sure everyone had what they needed. People started to wonder if he was even listening to his advisors anymore. Kaiser told everyone to hang on for a bit longer. Looks like the weather messed things up, and now even the territory missed their chance. Starts sweating, looking frustrated. He's getting impatient, wondering why the food hasn't been sent yet. The advisor jumps in with an easy fix. He handed over the iron to Baron, and got some food in return, just like they'd agreed. Stops surprised by what he just heard. One of the advisors doesn't agree and argues back, saying is on the royalist side. If they hand over iron, the Duke's house will probably turn against them. Another person in the room reminds everyone that help from the Duke's house and is already on the way, so maybe they should just wait it out. Still, the advisor who first mentioned trading iron isn't convinced and warns the group again. Now they couldn't just take food from people like before. The rules had changed, and grabbing supplies from the locals wasn't really an option anymore. The city was barely keeping things together, using soldiers to keep everyone calm. But it was obvious that things couldn't go on like this forever. Supplies were running low, and even the army was starting to get hungry. The fortress, which had always stood strong under the line, looked like it might fall, not to an enemy attack, but because the people inside might turn against each other. Count stood there, his face set and serious. He looked like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. The idea of going back to that kid after everything that had happened was clearly not something he wanted to do. He seemed annoyed, almost insulted by the suggestion. He bites his lip, then makes up his mind to go for it. He handed some iron over to, and headed out to grab some food. Some of the advisors just stare, caught off guard, but he doesn't stop. Everyone knew Baron didn't stand a chance against the Duke. No matter what anyone did or how much they tried to help now, it wouldn't make a difference. The outcome was set. The Duke was going to crush him, sooner or later. He doesn't care if it's the Duke's crew or Count's people causing trouble. If anyone wants to start a fight, he's ready for it. He knows nobody's getting past him or taking over his castle. Baron Fennel looked around at the group, expecting them to get moving. He was impatient, wanting someone to step up and send help before things got even worse. But the knight just stood there, calm and sure of himself, and told Baron Fennel there was no need to rush. He shows up with his army and stands right in front of the castle. Count just stands there, caught off guard. He didn't expect that at all, and for a second he doesn't know how to react. Waits outside the gate, his crew lined up and set to push through the walls. One of the mercenaries lets out a low groan, annoyed by how the armor digs in and feels tight all over. Up ahead, someone snaps another photo, catching the way the dwarves have to use twice the usual amount of those rare blood python scales just to make the armor fit him. He felt pretty good about himself. Mana was running through him now, and even without any armor, his muscles looked untouched. No cuts, no bruises. As Road passed, she reached out and knocked on his armor, giving a nod to how tough it was, definitely the kind of gear dwarves would make. His horse really stands out in the crowd. Everyone can't help but notice how awesome it looks. Speaks up, sounding more serious than usual, and tells everyone it's time to move. Baron leads the way, riding his impressive horse while and follow right behind him. He sends the order of knights out, and they start moving toward Count's castle. The Count stands on the walls with his advisors, watching as the knights get closer. None of them can believe what they're seeing. Everyone started whispering about how army had them trapped. The moat, which was supposed to protect them, was nothing but cracked dirt now because of the never-ending drought. Right now, things looked bad, no water, no way out. The guys look at the huge enemy army and can't figure out where all these soldiers came from. It's way more than any barony should have. Some of them start thinking maybe the royalists are backing them up with extra troops. Count starts sweating, trying to calm everyone down. He tries to act confident, bragging that nothing could threaten his castle, especially with those heavy weapons ready. He keeps saying the enemy doesn't stand a chance of even getting close. Down below, calls out to him, asking if he's actually up for the challenge. He looked down at the letter he'd sent earlier. There was no way out of this now. Count couldn't believe what was happening. He was totally thrown off by Baron showing up with a whole army and no heads up. It was way out of line and was clearly upset, barely keeping his cool. Slane let everyone know he'd already said what he wanted, and told the Count there'd be consequences for keeping the market shut down. Count's advisors weren't having it. They looked at him with annoyed faces, clearly not impressed. To them, he was just some kid trying to talk big, and they didn't take his words seriously at all. Count felt cornered. He raised his voice, demanding that if really wanted a fight, he should back it up with a real reason and make it official. Made it clear he wanted nothing to do with someone who didn't respect how nobles were supposed to act. The tension in the lane was obvious. He stared straight ahead, making it clear he wasn't backing down. Without hesitating, he motioned for to hand over the bow and get ready to pull. He started thinking about all the rules everyone had to follow, the ones that kept everything in line. Times they felt like invisible walls, always there, shaping what people could and couldn't do. It made him wonder who even came up with all these rules in the first place. Count steps back, looking at him like he's lost it. The guards move in around the Count, shields up, ready to keep him safe. Points out that the walls here are really tall. Whirled the arrow between his fingers, building up power before taking the shot. His smart horse dipped down, letting steady himself with one foot on the ground. When he let the arrow fly, it shot straight at Count, fast as lightning. The arrow smashed through a soldier's shield, went right through the guy and clipped off part of Count's ear. The Count stands there, not noticing right away that his ear is gone. Blood starts to drip down, but his face stays serious, almost like he's too focused on what's happening to care about the pain. Made it clear to him, this was basically a challenge. The story moves over to Capital now. Everyone heads into Marquise Branford's office. The room gets quiet as they find out Baron has kicked off a war. Countess mentions that because of that guy's advice, everyone made it through the famine by saving up grain. She doesn't say much after that, leaving the thought hanging in the air. Sir Biller looks uneasy and points out that kicking off a war right now isn't a good idea at all. The mood in the room gets tense as everyone thinks about how risky things are. Marquise Branford wanted to know what was really going on. Explained that the problem was all about them not letting anyone open the iron. They were supposed to send it to, and the place is close by. This little detail made it obvious that Count had been doing pretty much all his trading with land, almost like he had the whole market to himself. Countess was there too, catching on to what this meant. Always figured it's possible to come up with an excuse if you really need one. Marquise thinks it's best to kick him out of the group before things get any worse. One of the guys on the team nods right away, totally on board with the plan. But another guy speaks up and thinks they should be dealing with the drought and getting things back to normal instead of starting a fight. Sir wondered out loud if they just didn't like the kid. Marquise blew up when he heard that, clearly not happy with what had just been said. Steps up and tells everyone to chill out. Now they have to figure out how to fix things. Arguing isn't going to help anyone, it just eats up time they don't have. Stays cool, not even a little bit rattled. He can tell right away that someone's just trying to mess with the Duke's house and get a reaction. Another guy walks in and backs him up, turning to the group of royalist friends. Everyone just stands there, staring at him. Some guys start whispering to each other, realizing he's actually from the Duke's family. Marquise Branford looked at him for a moment, sizing him up. Then he nodded, calling him Count. Count lets everyone know that Baron went after Count, who's supposed to be neutral. All of this goes down while people are already struggling with a big natural disaster. He glanced over at Marquise Branford, eyes sharp, as if he wanted to know if the whole royalist group was really backing this decision. The room felt tense, everyone watching to see how she would react. Branford stares right back at him, not backing down. Her Bill notices right away that the Duke's house isn't messing around when it comes to information. They really know what they're doing. Countess can tell they looked confident from the very beginning, and she's starting to wonder if that means they've got something up their sleeve. Thought about how this whole mess might push the nobles who didn't care much before to turn against the royalists. For her family, this was basically the perfect chance to get ahead. Her dad's next move was huge. It could totally change which side wins. If Baron lost, their side would be out of the north completely. Even if the royalists backed out, nothing really changed. But if managed to pull off a win and grab the biggest iron mine up north the payoff might actually be worth the gamble. Marquis Branford kept his eyes steady, clearly convinced that the reason for going to war actually made sense. Count looked confused, trying to figure out what the guy was getting at. Branford lets them know this is just some beef between Baron and Count. It's not something the royalists started, and the Duke's family doesn't have any reason to get involved. Count stands firm, believing there's a right moment to go to war. He thinks that just watching from the sidelines means turning his back on what he's supposed to do as a royalist noble. For him, it's all about keeping the kingdom in order and not letting things fall apart. Stood out in the crowd, his height making him pretty hard to miss. He doesn't get why the Duke's family is so sensitive about everything. Count's face shows he didn't expect that reaction. Branford points out how Count pretty much acts like the Duke's puppet, just doing whatever the Duke's family wants. The story jumps back to Count, stuck inside this castle. His shouts bounce off the stone walls, filling the place with noise. Nodded, clearly impressed with how handled things. Just smirked, pretty sure the Count wouldn't even think about putting on earrings after what happened. Count dropped to his knees, clutching his ear where the arrow had ripped through. Pain shot through his head, and blood started to pour out fast. The nearby soldiers rushed over, calling out as they tried to stop the bleeding and help him out. Count was seriously pissed. He barked orders, telling all his soldiers to get ready. He didn't hold back, swearing at his men and making it clear he wanted them to crush the enemy without mercy. Castle stood tall and proud, its walls untouched by any enemy in all of history. The soldiers, pumped up and ready, answered together, their voices echoing through the old stone halls. They got the ballistae set up, making sure everything was good to go. Let the group know that the enemy was getting ready to make a move. Pointed out that these opponents knew how to defend themselves really well, so they'd probably fight back fast. One of the soldiers lets everyone know the ballistae are ready to go. Count stood there, blood seeping through his fingers as he pressed down on his injury. Even though he was hurt, he stayed focused and told his men what to do next. Hundreds of bright bolts shoot up into the sky, all aiming straight for where is standing next to his impressive horse. The volleys are closing in, just seconds away from hitting. Face turns serious as he reaches for his sword, ready to deal with whatever comes next. Bolts slam against the shields. Shots came flying but they blocked them with their weapons. The rest of the group ducked behind their shields, keeping themselves safe. They walk out of the attack without a scratch. Stands there, eyes wide, struggling to process what just happened. Mocking looked at what was in front of her and didn't seem impressed, She watched, arms crossed, waiting to see if anything else would happen. The challenge in her eyes was obvious. She expected more. He looks over at his crew and tells everyone to pull back to the spot they agreed on earlier. He got back to his main spot, getting ready for whatever was coming next. Claude couldn't help but grin. He looked pretty impressed, thinking their lord had chosen the exact right moment to jump into the fight. He glanced over at Wendy, wanting to see if she agreed. Their enemy probably hadn't even bothered to bring any food, so all they really needed to do was wait it out until the other side gave up. Looked irritated and couldn't help but wonder why they'd shown up at all. Claude seemed pretty chill about the whole thing. He figured it wasn't so bad since their team, well, the mages, had already put in a lot of work to set up the camp. Claude suggested everyone should just relax for a bit. Being at the back meant no heavy lifting for now. If anyone was bored, he was down for a game, perked up fast at the idea and wanted to know what the stakes were. Just then, stormed into the officers told everyone that just staying put would be enough to win. Some guys started to wonder if they really needed to do anything at all. Didn't agree, though. He knew that if they just sat around, the war would drag on, and they would eventually get more supplies from the Duke's side. Was sure that waiting around wasn't going to solve anything. He checks out their fortress and thinks this war might be over way sooner than anyone expects. Count, angry and hurting, glares after. Clutching his wound, he can't believe actually managed to get away after injuring him. The advisors figured Count realized he couldn't win against such strong firepower. Another advisor pointed out that must have switched things up, planning to wait until their side ran out of food. His anger was obvious. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Basically, the others were just planning to hang back and do nothing until his group gave up. That thought made his blood boil. The ducal family was supporting Mu Epsilon, so he figured help would show up soon. They weren't about to let go of the iron mine he controlled. All they had to do was hang in there until backup arrived. One of the soldiers came over to give an update. He said it looked like someone was tunneling right below them. The guy in charge couldn't believe it. He was so caught off guard, he actually peed himself. He looks through his monocle and spots them right away. He can't believe what he's seeing. Those guys are actually trying to dig a secret tunnel right where everyone can see. The advisors realized going straight at the front wasn't going to work, so they started digging underground instead. Someone noticed the way the castle was set up and figured out that the tunnel would probably come out near the southern gate. Told his soldier to get some troops set up at the southern gate. He wanted them ready to move the second the enemy showed up. The plan was simple. Once the enemies showed themselves, they'd all get hit at the same time. After that, the gates would open and the cavalry would get ready, just waiting for the signal to rush out and clear out the troops in one go. One of the soldiers seemed worried about the castle walls, but Count didn't seem bothered. The army didn't have any siege weapons, so they couldn't really threaten the walls. Most of their forces were just regular foot soldiers or riders, so even sending out a small group would be enough to keep them back. He looked confident, like he already knew he was going to win. Even though Baron had caught him off guard earlier, he was sure he'd be the one still standing when it was all over. That night the dwarves were busy, pulling wagons up a hill that looked down on both Count's fortress and the camp. Among them there was one dwarf who stood out. He was actually their king. That lord just ordered them to bring whatever it was straight to him. Standing up on the high ground, it was almost impossible to see anything. There weren't any torches around, so everything was pitch black. One of the dwarves pointed out he couldn't see a thing. Someone else glanced over at, clearly unsure. They followed the Lord's instructions exactly, but doubts were starting to creep in. Everyone wanted to believe the plan would work, but it was obvious that not everyone was convinced yet. Isn't sure about any of this. He remembers back to a moment when was talking with the dwarves. They were all pretty confident, especially about something had built. The way talked, it sounded like there was no chance his work would ever fail. Looked up talking about flying in the sky and wondering if anyone managed to snag the plans for that old legendary airship, the kind of tech nobody's seen in ages. Just stared, totally confused about what was even talking about, but seemed pretty chill about it and hinted that everything would make more sense soon. The two of them settled down by a fire, the flames flickering as the night closed in. Stands up and casually tosses a cloth over the fire. Watches, confused about what's up to but doesn't say anything. The cloth starts to catch. The object slowly starts to rise. Warm air underneath, lighter than the cooler air around it, pushes it upwards. The dwarves freeze, caught off guard by what just happened. Stands there, totally thrown off, not sure how to react. Watched as pointed out the hot air balloon, curious about what he was supposed to notice. Wanted everyone to check out how the balloon puffed up bigger and bigger. He explained that when the air inside gets heated, it pushes upward and fills the whole balloon, kind of like how clouds form and grow in the sky. The light switched off, leaving the room in darkness. Didn't seem bothered at all. He just shrugged, acting like the wind was no big deal. Shook his head. He thought about it. If it was just the wind, the thing would probably flap around a bit, not suddenly puff up like that. Grins and he grabs a branch and starts sketching a balloon shape on the dirt. He wonders what would happen if they made an airbag way bigger than the one he just drew. grabs the branch and gets going. He sketched a picture of himself and then added a big basket next to it, one that looked big enough for someone to fit inside. He imagined it could somehow fill up with hot air, almost like those balloons he saw online. Wondered out loud why hot air goes up in the first place. It wasn't something he really understood. He just stumbled on it one day when he was lighting a fire to dry some laundry. Couldn't believe it. He thought nobody would ever figure something like that out by just watching a fire. Then, out of nowhere, told to take him somewhere. Looked at him, not sure where he wanted to go. Heads straight to the workshop, clearly pumped about the idea. He can't wait to get started, ready to jump in and see how it all works out. Meanwhile, up on a hill, stands waiting for them, glancing at the path just as they show up. It looks like they made it right on time. Looking pretty worn out, just brushes it off like it's nothing special for dwarfs. Passed the helmet to him, letting him know that everyone, the mages and the knights, were set to go. He looked over at and told her to get ready as well. Stands there, clearly pissed off, glaring at the group. He looks like he's about to lose it, trying to figure out why they were told to dig a tunnel if this was all part of some other plan. But before he can get his frustration out, a mercenary steps up and hands him a, making it clear he shouldn't mess with their boss. Just moves on, acting like nothing happened. He heads up the hill, weaving through the guys around him. Then he comes to a stop. At the top of the hill, and his squad look down at Count's fortress. Tells the guys that from here on out they're heading straight into enemy land. Just like they practiced, the plan is to sneak into the castle and get inside. Their main goal, open up the gate for everyone else. They had to call in's cavalry unit to help out. But everyone knew they were tough to beat, since they had the best gear in the north. Even with mana under control, things weren't going to get any easier. The fights ahead would be tougher, with enemies way stronger than, if they couldn't keep up, things could go bad fast. Ending a war this big isn't easy. For them, this might be their last chance. His guys look tense, but just grins at them, looking pretty confident. He tries to reassure everyone, letting them know they've already started handling the situation. It was the first to make it through the beast-filled forest, something nobody else had pulled off before. Against all odds, they even managed to win a war everyone thought was impossible. Now, he questions if they're missing anything in their plans, almost like he can't believe they've come this far. The soldiers shook their heads and made it clear they weren't scared. When he questioned them about being afraid, they stood their ground, showing they had no fear. He puts on his helmet, looking over at him, kind of impressed at how much he's changed, way quicker than most people would expect. The balloon was set to go, with Wendy handling the flames to get it off the ground. Looked over, signaling that it was finally time to take off. The scene shifts over to the fortress. Count's soldiers are on alert, keeping an eye on everything that's happening outside. Some of them are leaning over the walls, scanning the area, while others stick close together, waiting for any sign of trouble. Everyone's tense, ready for whatever might come next. One guard checked things out with his monocle and mentioned how the workers had been putting in a ton of effort on the tunnel earlier that morning. But now, not a single one of them was around. Another guard just shrugged, guessing that they must be off sleeping somewhere for the night. More guards showed up to take over for the ones already there. The new guys wanted to know if anything strange had happened, but the others just shook their heads, nothing to report. Nobody really knew how much longer they'd be stuck on this watch, and it was starting to get to them. The hours dragged on, and everyone was just waiting to see what might happen next. He figured they probably didn't even want to fight in the first place. After all that, he could finally relax and get some rest. Those guys had been a real bother. He looks up and spots something. 7. The soldiers spotted some balloons drifting toward them in the sky. One of the guys in the group noticed and pointed them out, trying to figure out what they were. They all stared up, a little confused, unsure if the balloons meant something good or bad. Some round shapes started rolling closer. The guard noticed them first and wondered if these things were monsters. Before anyone can do anything, drops down. He grabs one guy by the neck and throws him hard onto the ground. He swings his weapon once and slices the soldier clean in half. He turns around and goes back to wrap things up. The soldier on the ground didn't make it. Everyone starts heading down, and the rest of the group following close behind. He decided he'd be out front again, leading the charge. Everyone could tell he meant business. This time, nobody was getting away. Inside Count's castle, the commander got his orders and left. Walks up to the Count's room. The guards standing outside the bedroom suddenly notice him walking up. They look surprised. Commander steps forward and wants to know where the Lord is. One of the guards tells him the Lord hasn't woken up yet and is still sleeping inside. Commander bursts into the room, pushing the doors wide open. Inside, the Count is just lying in bed, completely knocked out and not even noticing the commotion. He woke up to some loud noise and blinked, confused to see Commander standing there. He didn't expect to see him at this hour, and his mind was racing, trying to figure out what was going on. Looked serious and wasted no time, letting him know something big was happening. Someone had broken into the castle. Count freezes, his eyes wide. He wasn't expecting this at all. For a moment, it's like he can't believe what just happened. And the others showed up, floating in by balloon. The attack kicked off. led the charge, taking out every soldier who tried to stop him. Right behind him were and the rest of the group pushing forward through the chaos. Energy was off the charts. He was hyped up and ready to go, rallying the guys to give it their all. Everyone knew what they had to do, take down the last ear from that weird-looking lord with the awkward chin. The sounds of fighting carry into the Count's bedroom. Count looked at the FINRA soldiers and pointed at the wall, signaling for them to climb over. At the same time, he nodded toward the tunnel, letting them know he was thinking about that route too. Commander stuck to the report, explaining how they showed up out of nowhere, dropping in from the sky on weird, round things no one recognized. Count couldn't believe it. He just stared, trying to wrap his head around the idea that these things could actually fly. The whole situation felt unreal to him, like was talking about something straight out of a video game or a wild story. Shrugs off the question about how they got there. Right now, that stuff doesn't matter. The enemy's pushing in hard, taking over the castle way faster than anyone expected. There's no time to waste, everyone needs to move and fast. Lays out the plan, he's heading straight for the underground passage that leads to the outer bailey. His job is to hold the castle gate no matter what. Once that's handled, they'll signal the main group waiting at the south gate. That way, they can surround the enemy and try to turn things around. The Count stands there for a second, caught off guard. He mutters something about how they already targeted the tunnel earlier, like he's trying. It was a setup, and they got distracted by something meant to throw them off. He just stood there, staring at his castle like he couldn't believe what was happening. This place had always stood strong, never lost a fight. Now, he looked like the thought of being the last of the family was hitting him hard. You could tell he was right on the edge, trying not to lose control. Commander stepped up and put his hands on the Count's shoulders. He was serious, trying to get the Count's attention before anything else happened. Knew this was important, and he wanted to make sure the Count listened to what he had to say first. The Lord stood his ground in the castle, determined to hold it no matter what. He ordered his loyal retainers to slip away through a hidden passage, hoping they could find help before things got worse. As they hurried off, he stayed behind, ready to face whatever came next. If things still don't calm down after all that, it's time to bring out the last resort. Inside the walls, everything felt close and a little tense. Guys moved around, trying to keep busy or stay out of trouble, but everyone knew things could change fast. The sense of being stuck in that place was always there, hanging over them like a shadow. Count's soldiers rushed to grab their weapons, tense and alert. They couldn't believe someone had managed to break in. Pushes ahead, not slowing down for anything. He takes down every soldier he comes across. 2 are out almost instantly, and another soldier steps up and swings at him, hoping to land a hit. Blocks the attack, using his strength to push back. With one powerful swing of his sword, he cuts right through the soldier, splitting him cleanly in half. 3 more soldiers burst into the room. 2 of them had crossbows ready, while the last one gripped his sword, clearly trying to snap everyone into action. He pushed the others to stay focused, reminding them there was no time to freak out. The enemy wasn't a big group, so they had to shoot and fast. The soldiers spotted something above them and quickly glanced up, searching for their squad leader. Their eyes scanned the area, alert and ready for whatever was coming next. Balloon suddenly drops down on top of them. Alpha steps in and completely takes control, leaving everyone else with no chance. Glared at, annoyed. He always warned that he was too heavy but never listened. Just shrugged it off, not really caring about complaints. It was the usual back and forth between the two, like they'd done this 100 times before. 2 more soldiers stepped up from behind, ready to attack, and stepped in just in time, taking down the attackers with their weapons and stopping things from getting worse. Looked over, checking if anyone was hurt. Glanced at, kind of surprised that he hadn't changed at all, even after everything that happened the night before. Just let out an awkward laugh, not really sure what to say. Out of nowhere, notices something she hadn't seen before. He spots Count's soldiers up on the tower, trying to keep the gate closed. Looks like the enemy's already broken into the castle. Case team is already set up, ready to defend. Didn't see that coming either. He thought they'd have more time. Clearly, there's someone on the other side who catches on quick. He realizes the enemy they scattered with the tunnel plan is probably getting back together soon. They need to move fast. Looked around at the group of soldiers. She wanted to make sure everyone was on board with the plan. The soldiers nodded, letting her know they were ready. He turns to Care, giving him the job of stopping the soldiers on the wall and taking out their siege weapons. While that's happening, he asks to go look for Count. He stepped forward, getting everyone's attention. He was about to make a move and open the way to the castle gate. The group got tense, checking themselves and glancing at each other, making sure they were set for whatever was coming next. Everyone lifts their swords up, focusing hard as energy starts to flow into their blades. Together, they get ready, showing they're all set for what's coming next. Spots them and can't help but smile. He pulls his helmet down, getting ready for what's next. He tells everyone it's time to follow Knight's command and get moving. They walk up to the main gate and spot what's waiting for them there. Commander stood at the edge of the wall, watching the soldiers move around. One of his men rushed over and let him know the enemy was on the way. Didn't seem surprised. He'd expected this. Of course, they were going for the castle gate. He told all the soldiers to lift their spears and get ready. They needed to block the enemy and hold their ground. Moved forward with his men, pushing toward Count's soldiers. The commander knew they had to hold their ground until backup came from the south gate. On the other side, his troops tightened their grip on their spears, getting ready for the clash. And his crew quickly take control, leaving everyone else outnumbered and outmatched. Commander stares at what just happened, clearly surprised by how strong they are. Soldiers start to march out, boots hitting the ground in steady rhythm. They keep their eyes sharp, focused on what's ahead. Each one knows what's expected of them, and nobody's slacking off. Their armor and gear make a bit of noise, but they move like they've done this plenty of times before. He cut through them easily, like he was up against total beginners. One after another, they started falling. When Count's soldiers saw how strong the enemy was, they started to lose their cool. Some of them even looked like they wanted to run. Commander just stared, trying to figure out what was going on. He noticed that every weapon the enemy held seemed to glow with mana, which was seriously weird. It made him wonder if he was actually facing a whole squad of knights, not just regular fighters. Even though those guys were knights, it didn't make sense how fast they were pushing back the middle row of infantry. He notices right away, standing at the front. Right then, he knows they need to stop him. Count's soldiers pushed forward, and Commander was right in the thick of it. The enemy's charge was way too strong for the troops guarding the gate. It was clear that stopping them now wasn't going to happen. If things kept going like this, the gate wouldn't hold out much longer, and the main force still hadn't shown up. Gave the order to wreck everything that made the gate work. The soldier paused, unsure, so made it clear every part that controlled the gate had to go, and fast. Without wasting a second, Commander jumped into action, ready to lead by example. Heads over, he spotted the guy in both of his classes. A sudden light snapped through the darkness. Watches as shows off his power, and he can't believe what he's seeing. It's way more intense than he expected, and for a second, just stands there trying to process it all. The fight between them keeps going, with still in the game. The soldiers charged forward without their commander, unsure of what to do but still pushing ahead. He blocked the attacks and quickly struck back. Goes in fast, aiming for but's ready for it. He blocks her attack and quickly hits back, not giving her a chance to recover. They stop for a moment, watches him closely, steps forward and lets everyone know who he is. He's order commander, and he carries himself like someone used to being in charge. He let his energy loose, making it clear that nobody was getting by him. The story moves underground, where Count stands in front of a prisoner chained up against the wall. He looks straight at the guy someone he calls. The place feels cold and tense, with the Count's eyes never leaving the prisoner. He tells him that someone needs to stall for a bit. The prison slowly blinks awake. He looked down at the chains hanging around his neck, waiting for someone to do something about them before anything else happened. Everyone was wondering about. He stood out right away, looking way tougher than most guys around. People started to wonder if he could actually take on who was known for being really hard to beat. The chapter had everyone excited, waiting to see what would happen next. If the video was fun to watch, guys can tap the like button, follow the channel, and turn on notifications to catch the next episode right when it drops. They make it to the main gate and spot what's waiting for them. The commander stood at the end, keeping an eye on everything. A soldier rushed up to him with some news. The enemy was on the move. The commander didn't look surprised at all. He'd already guessed they'd head straight for the castle gate. He raised his arm, signaling the soldiers to get ready. Spears pointed forward, everyone tensed up, waiting to block the enemy from getting any closer. And his crew moved forward, facing off against Count's troops. The commander's job was to stall them long enough for the main group at the south gate to show up. Soldiers tightened their grip on their spears, ready for whatever was coming. They try to fight back, but his guys are just too much for them. Commander stares at what just happened, barely able to believe how strong they really are. It hits him how much he underestimated them, and now he's left trying to figure out what to do next. Soldiers start to move out. He took them out easily, like he was dealing with beginners. One after another, they started falling. When the soldiers saw how powerful their enemies were, they started to freak out. Some of them looked like they wanted to run, while others just froze, not knowing what to do. It was pretty clear they didn't think they could handle what was coming. Commander couldn't believe what he was seeing. Every weapon in front of him had mana running through it, which wasn't normal at all. He started to wonder if everyone here was actually a knight or something, because regular people didn't have gear like this. Even though those guys were knights, it didn't really make sense for them to force the medium infantry to fall back so fast. He notices up at the front of the group. Right away, he realizes they need to do something to stop him. Count's soldiers charged forward, led by Commander. They were moving fast, way too strong to be held back by the troops guarding the gate. It was clear the defense wouldn't hold. If things kept going like this, the gate would fall before any backup could even show up. Gave the order to take out the gate. The soldier paused, unsure, so made it clear every part that made the gate work needed to be wrecked. There wasn't much time to waste. Commander didn't hold back and jumped right into the chaos, moving fast to get it done. Steps forward. He stood there with the other guy, both of them side by side. A sudden flash lit up the scene. Stares at, trying to process what just happened. He didn't expect to be that strong, and it catches him off guard. For a second, just stands there trying to make sense of the whole situation. The fight keeps going with pushing forward. Both of them are locked in, not giving an inch. Every move is quick, and you can tell they're both looking for any chance to win. Attacking Commander. He blocked the incoming hits and quickly struck back. Went in for an attack, moving fast. Saw it coming and managed to block her just in time. Thought about all those hours spent playing Counter-Strike, how the game always got his heart racing. Every match felt like a test, not just of skill, but of nerves too. It wasn't just about aiming well or moving fast. It was about staying focused, even when things got tense. For him, those games were more than just fun. They taught him how to handle pressure, both in-game and out in the real world. They stop for a second, watches him closely, trying to figure out what he's thinking. Steps forward and lets everyone know who he is. He's the order commander for, and it's clear he takes his role seriously. He lets out his mana, blocking the way and making it clear no one's getting through. The scene then cuts over to Count. Deep down in the underground tunnels, he stood there, eyes locked on a prisoner who was chained up against the wall. The guy was, and just standing there, you could sense there was some kind of history between them. He realizes someone needs to stall for a bit. The prison looms ahead, tense and uncertain. Wakes up and slowly opens his eyes. He looks at the chains still wrapped around his neck and gestures to them, making it clear that he wants those off before anything else happens. Heads out. The guy watched as the cavalry soldiers struggled to handle the chaos breaking out around them. The whole scene was intense, with people pushing back harder than anyone expected. It was clear the soldiers hadn't seen anything like this before, and they were definitely getting overwhelmed. He went around taking out everyone in his path, making sure nothing was left standing, not weapons, not people. Takes out a few more as she moves forward. The fight goes on. Neither side is giving up, and things are getting more intense with every second. Each move is faster than the last, and it's clear that nobody wants to back down. The crowd can't look away, totally caught up in the action. See? He blocks the way, making it clear that nobody's getting past him. Stands off to the side, keeping an eye on everything going on. There was nothing but him. There is no content provided to rewrite. He rushes forward, gripping his huge sword tightly. Watches him speed by, not expecting him to move that quickly. Lunged forward, aiming to land a hit, but was quick, blocking the attack with his shield. Without wasting a second, pushed back, going for a counterattack. Reacted fast, using his own shield to block's move. Blocks another hit coming from above. But he takes the blow head-on this time and clenches his jaw, pushing through the pain. Keeps going. He tries to fight back, but is stopping. Went in swinging, but blocked every hit. Spotted a chance, a small gap in his guard, and landed a clean shot right on his face. He smacks the front of his helmet, and it goes flying off his head. He tries to fight back one last time, but takes a solid hit. Landed another hit. There is no actual script content provided to rewrite. The original sentence is just above. If you provide the actual script or more content, I can rewrite it in the requested style. Soldiers couldn't believe their eyes. Their commander was actually losing. For a second, they froze, thrown off by what was happening. One soldier glared at the guy next to him, annoyed that he was getting distracted. Instead of getting caught up in what was going on with their leader, he wanted everyone to focus on the real problem, the enemies closing in right in front of them. Looked at the power in front of him and realized just how overwhelming it was. He could already tell his arms weren't going to hold up much longer. Even so, something in him just wouldn't let go. He stands his ground, barely fazed by the push. A quick laugh escapes him, showing he's still in control. He realized that if they waited any longer, the enemy's main group would catch up and close in around them. While went in for another attack, kept thinking things through. Instead of trying to block's moves straight on, focused on redirecting them from the side. That way he could hold his ground and keep some space between them. He watched closely, waiting for the right moment. Whenever the other guy left an opening during their attacks, that was his chance to take control. He knew if he ever got impatient and rushed in without thinking, it would all be over for him. Stepped in, closing the distance between them. He looked the other guy over, almost sizing him up, and let his words hang in the air. The challenge was clear, and for a second the room felt even smaller. The guy goes straight for his face with his sword. Reacts fast and manages to duck out of the way just in time. Right away, steps in and throws his elbow, catching the other guy hard enough to make him bleed. Gets his head back in the game, spots a chance, and goes for it. But something's off, things don't go as planned. Drops to the ground and rolls out of the way, moving quick. He takes his sword and slices off his own arm. He thinks it's not too bad. Then, without hesitating, he hits himself in the chest and blood starts to drip from him. He remembered what Count had said. The Count was sure about it. He wanted everyone to believe that this guy might actually be able to stand up to the strongest swordsman in the north. Hit the ground, The cavalry soldiers freeze, caught off guard by what just happened. None of them saw it coming, and it takes them a moment to process what's going on. He stared at the result, not sure what to think. While just kept moving forward, he couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. Soldiers looked pumped as they watched the gatekeeper go down. They'd seen the captain pull off crazy stuff before, so nobody was surprised. Some of them started clapping each other on the back, grinning because everything was going just like they hoped. Gave the signal, and every soldier started moving at once. He pushed forward, not slowing down for anything. It was time to go for it, so he reached out and swung the gate open. Hurt and struggling to keep it together, tried to get his attention. Even though things were rough, she just let him know it wasn't looking good for her. Things aren't going to turn out the way anyone expects. One of his soldiers quickly steps up and lets the commander know what's going on. The gate just sat there, totally stuck. All the gears and stuff inside were wrecked, so there was no way anyone could get it open. At this point, it was pretty much a lost cause. Answered, showing he'd actually thought things through this time. Pointed at something off in the distance, catching everyone's attention. Army was closing in and the numbers just kept growing. It didn't matter how tough someone was, if they got surrounded there wasn't much hope. Just holding the gate wouldn't be enough, eventually would win. As tension built, a few soldiers started making their way toward. Looked over at the commander, clearly unsure about what to do next. The tension in the air was thick, everyone could feel it. One of the knights standing nearby squared his shoulders and got ready for whatever was coming, almost daring anyone to step up to them. The guys were bracing themselves, not backing down, even though no one knew exactly what would happen next. Iceland looks over at them, his thoughts racing as he tries to figure out what to do next. Everyone was completely out of mana. They were wiped out, barely able to stand. With the enemies getting closer, nobody had the strength left to fight back. Walks over to the gate. Lace reached out and put his hand on it. He starts letting his power out, energy building up around him. His sword begins to glow, catching his attention. For a second, he wonders if he might actually be able to pull this off. He told everyone to step back and stay clear of his side. In his mind, things were getting serious, and he needed some space to figure out his next move. Being a master wasn't really about hitting a certain milestone or anything. It was more like a title people used, since nobody could agree on what actually counted as a master's level. The mana blade, which everyone saw as a sign that someone was a real knight, started to pull in all the scattered mana around it. Instead of letting it spread out everywhere, the blade drew the energy together, tightening it up and packing it down as much as possible, like squeezing everything into one sharp point. Mana started flowing from him, and a pink glow lit up his chest as it began to change. The light around him turned yellow, shining brightly. The light was way too intense now, so bright that the soldiers had to squint and turn their heads away. While everyone struggled to see what was going on, started talking, keeping his eyes on the scene. There was an old legend from the ancient empire that got passed down to the warriors. Even for those guys who trained their mana to the limit, there was still one thing they had to do if they wanted to be seen as a true master. Aura glowed stronger than it ever had before. He got ready, focusing all his energy, and brought out his aura blade. With a sharp move, he swung it right at the gate, aiming to break through. The soldier pointed at the guys and signaled his squad to surround them. He was determined to get back at them for breaking into castle, not planning to let them off easy. A few of them started coming up behind him. The soldier crept up behind him, close enough to attack. The gate swung open and his horse trotted in, looking pretty impressive. Out of nowhere, the horse caught him in the face with a kick and ended up right there with him. Iceland's strong horse reared up and screamed, its voice echoing through the cold air. Glanced at, eyeing the horse trailing behind them. He seemed a bit confused about why the animal was with them. Just shrugged, as if to say the horse had decided to tag along by itself like it had a mind of its own. The two kept moving, the horse quietly following their lead. The soldiers freeze, staring at the gate that's now broken clean in half. None of them really know what's going on, but it's obvious something big just happened. Everyone's looking around, confused and not sure what to do next. Commander took a nasty kick from a horse, the kind that would knock the wind out of anyone. Even after that, he didn't waste time. He told his guys to back up and get inside the keep, away from the mess outside. Meanwhile's horse was already getting ready to move, its hoof lifting off the ground. Made it easier for him to get on his horse, then gave a sharp signal for everyone to attack. The order was clear, no one on the other side was supposed to make it out alive. The troops moved fast, following's command without hesitation. Down in the underground levels is on her knees in front of her opponent. The place feels heavy and tense, the kind of spot where every sound echoes. Looks worn out, like she's already been through a lot, but she's still holding on, not backing down. Her opponent stands over her, making it clear this isn't going to be easy for her. She sits there, lost in her own head, thinking about everything that just happened. It turns out to be standing there and sees him. Looked over at him, curious about what he thought. The question about his link to the Shadow Knights hung in the air, making him tense up. He could feel everyone's eyes on him, curious and maybe a little suspicious. His mind raced, trying to decide how much he should say, knowing that anything he revealed might change the way people saw him. The room felt heavier, and he could sense that things were about to get real. If he liked the video, he'd tap the like button and maybe subscribe, just to catch the next episode when it dropped. Turning on notifications made sure he wouldn't miss out.